today we're going to make a lemon cheesecake tart with fresh berries. We'll walk through every step into making the graham cracker cookie crust, the no-bake cheesecake filling that's topped with fresh lemon curd, and finished off with freshly whipped cream and some cut strawberries. This complete recipe is on my blog, Tasty Pastry Kitchen. Alright, so let's get started with the tart dough first. The crust for this tart is a combination of crushed graham crackers and my perfect sweet tart crust. So go ahead and crush some graham crackers in a zip top bag with a rolling pin and set that aside. The process to make my perfect sweet tart crust is in my number tart video, which I will link in the description box below and up in the corner of this video. So go ahead and make that crust, stick it in the fridge to chill, and then pull it out. The way I like to roll out my sweet tart crust is on saran wrap. It just makes it easier to roll it out without sticking to everything and makes it easier for us to move it from the counter into the tart pan. So you have some plastic wrap on the bottom and then some plastic wrap on top, and since the dough is a little bit cold from the fridge, I'm just gonna hit it a couple times to soften it up just a little bit, not to the point where you're actually like cracking and breaking the dough, but just to kind of open it up a little bit so that when we roll it out, it's just more exposed to the air and just gets a little bit warmer. So throughout this process, just pick up the plastic wrap and move it around so it doesn't get stretched out too much, and just move it to the part where you're rolling. So you can definitely use a pie pan for this dessert. The baking time will be a little bit different, but the rolling and the filling will be exactly the same. I'm going to use a tart pan because I just like the way that it looks when you remove the pan and the sides are exposed. So whatever pan that you're using, use that as a guide to determine how far out you should roll your dough. And once you've reached the proper size, take off that top layer of saran wrap and pour all of your graham cracker crumbs over the top of the tart dough. Then take your hands and smooth all of the graham crackers over the top of the crust and kind of push down into the crust. What we're doing is creating a hybrid crust. So you've got the sweet tart crust, which is kind of crumbly, and then you kind of have that graham cracker flavor from the graham cracker crumbs. Then cover your tart dough and graham crackers with the plastic wrap and use your rolling pin to press the crumbs into the dough. Now peel off that top layer of saran wrap and slide your arm underneath the bottom counter saran wrap and flip your tart dough into the pie or tart pan. Now at this point, your tart dough might be getting a little soft, just like mine, and that's totally fine. We can always patch up holes using the excess dough that comes off of the sides. So kind of fit your tart dough into the pan, making sure that it's flush with the bottom, and then gently peel off the saran wrap. Now we're going to go around the sides of the pan and trim off the excess, as well as pushing the dough up against the side so that it gets that ridged pattern when you remove the mold. Now if you're doing this in a pie plate, all you have to do is just make sure that the sides are up against the pan, and then you would curl over the top so that it would be the outer crust, the outer perimeter of the pie. Once you're done with that, take a fork and prick the bottom of the crust many times to prevent any sort of air bubbles from catching underneath the pan and causing an uneven bottom crust. Freeze your crust for at least 10 minutes before baking. Now we are going to prepare the crust for blind baking. So take a piece of parchment paper or a piece of foil and crumple it up, and then fold it onto the inside of the tart dough and pour in your pie weights. Place this into the lower third of an oven that's been preheated to 400 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. Remove the crust from the oven and then remove the weights. So you're going to notice that the crust is still rather pale. That's completely normal. What you do want is for the crust to have structure at this point. So go ahead and remove the weights and then place the dough back into the oven for another 5 to 10 minutes to brown it off. And when you take your crust out of the oven, it should look like this. So now we're going to protect the crust with some egg white, and what this does is when you put the egg white on a hot crust, it immediately cooks, so it creates this protein protective surface so that your crust beneath doesn't get soggy. Set that aside to cool completely before using. Okay, so now let's start our lemon curd. To a small saucepan, go ahead and add your egg yolks and your sugar and give that a good whisk. Then add your lemon juice and your butter and turn on your heat source to medium-low. Whisk for a couple minutes until the curd has slightly thickened. So you'll know that the curd is done when it coats the back of a spoon very thickly, Or if you have an instant read thermometer, it should be approximately 196 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll also know when it's done when it just starts to bubble. Right when you see the first bubbles, immediately turn off the heat because you don't want it to boil. Then add your pinch of salt and lemon zest, and then pour that into a separate container to cool completely, and you'll notice that it'll get slightly thicker upon standing. Now let's make the cream cheese filling. So we're going to start by making the whipped cream first, because we're going to pipe whipped cream on top of the tart and then use a little bit of the whipped cream to dilute the cream cheese filling. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just make a batch of whipped cream. So I'm just adding some cold, heavy whipping cream to the bowl of a stand mixer and letting that go for a couple minutes until it reaches medium peaks. Then go ahead and remove all of that whipped cream from the bowl, and we don't even have to clean the bowl. We'll go straight into softening the cream cheese and sugar together. So go ahead and let that beat for a couple minutes. You can't overbeat this, but you do want it to be super smooth and soft. So I just let it go while I prep the other ingredients. And once it's reached that really soft stage, go ahead and add your vanilla. Let that mix for a couple seconds, then stop the stand mixer and give your bowl a good scrape to make sure all of the powdered sugar has been mixed in. Now we're going to fold in the whipped cream by hand. So take a portion of that whipped cream that you already made and go ahead and add that to the cream cheese mixture, and then use a spatula to fold the whipped cream in. Go ahead and set that aside, and we will get ready to assemble this tart. Now go ahead and grab your baked and cooled tart crust and add that cream cheese filling to the bottom. Use a spatula, and I'm just using an offset spatula here to smooth it all out. Then grab your lemon curd and give it a good stir to make it nice and smooth, and pour that on top of the cream cheese filling. Use a clean spatula to smooth out a thin layer on top of the cream cheese filling. Place the tart in the refrigerator while you cut your strawberries. When you're done, pull the tart out from the fridge and start your decorating. I'm going to pipe a border of stars around the perimeter of my tart, and you can either start by piping around the tart first and then filling with strawberries, which is what I like to do, or you can put the strawberries on first and pipe the whipped cream on top. Or if you don't want to do any piping at all, you can always just dollop some whipped cream when you serve the tart. I like doing the whipped cream first because what it does is kind of create a nest, and then I fill the strawberries in afterwards and decorate from there. So I like to use cut strawberries because it gives us a contrast of light and dark with only one fruit. It's also a little bit easier for the person to eat, and I like to leave tops on some of the strawberries because it gives you a little bit of color on what would otherwise be a pretty red dessert. And the last thing we should do is add a glaze to the top of the strawberries. So I'm using a nappage, which I went over in my banana cream fresh strawberry pie video, and I will leave a link for that if you're interested in making this type of glaze. You can also use a loose apricot jelly. So all you do is microwave apricot jelly with a little bit of water added, then you stir it, and that automatically becomes a glaze. Stick the finished tart in the fridge for at least 4 hours before serving. Now if you're using a tart pan, you're going to want to remove that before serving, and it's very easy. All you have to do is place the tart on some sort of tall, skinny object that's really sturdy, like a can of beans or like the deli container that I'm using here, and just slide the outer ring off. Now, if you have a very large spatula or one of those spatulas that transports layers of cakes, you can remove the tart from that bottom piece. But since I only typically make one tart at a time, I just end up serving it on there. And here it is, the finished lemon cheesecake with fresh strawberries. This really is an all-encompassing dessert because you have freshness from the strawberries, you have tartness from the lemon curd, creaminess from the whipped cream and cream cheese filling, and then the crust is a little bit salty, so it really does cover all the bases. And if you like this video or learned something from this video, go ahead and join me by subscribing. I post in-depth baking videos weekly. Thanks for watching and have a great day.